here with Erin Eatough. Erin, how are you?
I'm great, Al. It's so nice to be here with you.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see you. Your work on employee angst and workforce adaptation, and obviously now AI transformation, the theme of today. There's so much going on in the world. We're going to talk about a lot. If you would introduce yourself and tee us up for your presentation.
Sure. Well, as you said, I'm Erin Eatough. I am the Chief Science Officer and co founder at Fractional Insights. And Fractional Insights is a research backed consulting and advisory firm founded by organizational psychologists. And we are on a mission to help make work better for people. And in particular, are focused right now on helping organizations find higher performance and to go through AI transformation more smoothly by really considering the human side of these problem spaces.
Well, I mean, you've done great work today or up to this point, and I know you have great things forthcoming. You and I are going to be in Paris in a
Yeah.
couple weeks now, and
Yeah.
yeah, you're going to talk more about this. But if you would, I'm going to get out of the way. You do your thing, and we'll come back and talk about it in a few minutes. That work?
That sounds great. Let me pull up my slides. Share my screen. Here we go. Here we go. All right. You can see this okay?
Yep.
All right. So, really, I just wanted to start by acknowledging and naming we really are in a phase transition for society and humanity with AI. And we're stepping into a truly new era of what work and life is going to look like. And so this image on the screen is sort of to allude to and call up, the mental idea of really moving into a whole new way of being and working. Because digitization and AI are really changing everything about work. Every function is being transformed. Company lifespans are shrinking, acquisitions are increasing, jobs are totally morphing. And for many, this is huge opportunity. And we know already that companies that are able to capitalize on AI and that are bringing AI in successfully are achieving higher revenue growth. But it's not guaranteed, and we know that to be true as well. And recent trends around ideas of really the workforce being flooded with sludge from AI and poor quality things and shadow AI. And there's a lot of challenges that organizations are facing around this as well. And we know from research that many organizations are self-identifying as in a space of challenge when it comes to implementation and workforce transformation. And really, that's because technology alone, the advent of this incredibly powerful technology alone, isn't enough to be able to translate it into the value and the impact that organizations want to make. And it's really changing the fundamentals of what people need to do, and how they need to behave and how they need to think about their role in driving organizational outcomes. But people are still the critical value drivers in organizations. They are still the ones that need to build relationships, to create the new ideas, to work with the tools and technology and AI to solve the problems and direct it in the direction that we want to go. And the companies who win or who are going to have these advantages are going to be the ones that can design work in a way that really helps the people thrive and do that type of work better. Because even now, every business problem ultimately has a people solution. We need people to do something differently or act differently or solve a problem in a certain way. And we know that technology and AI doesn't automatically translate into dollars. It just doesn't. And that's because it's not just about technology, it's also about psychology, because it's the people who are using the technology that really hold the keys to success. And so the way we're thinking about it at Fractional Insights and, really taking this type of a lens is that there's three big things that organizations need to focus on and be concerned with as we are thinking about the challenge of AI transformation. The first one is strategy and alignment. So, starting with strategy, having a clear North Star, having alignment between your CHRO, your CIO, potentially a transformation officer, or a chief operations officer, but really ensuring that the cross functional alignment is there and that the organization has a clear vision on why are we bringing AI in at what moments and what functions in what places. Why are we doing it and what are we expecting to get out of it for the sake of what? How are we going to measure the value? How are we going to know if it's working, if we're getting the value that we intend? And what does good work even mean now if we're expecting our people to produce their highest quality, peak performance, highest impact work? What does that good work, what does peak performance even mean when we have so much horsepower in the tools that we're bringing in? So getting clear on that strategy and alignment on it, that's one. Two is we need to redesign the systems and not look at the individual when we're running into friction points, not blame individuals. So for example, right now, I was telling you, Al, just before we started, that I recently was speaking to the media about this idea of poor quality work getting flooded into the system, and how do we avoid poor quality work from AI really creating just more work. It's different work. It's like quality checking, and it's like ensuring that things are accurate and factual and make sense and all these things. And I think like our instinct is to sort of look at individuals and say, why aren't you doing it? How could you let this go through? Or how could you not see, why aren't you doing better checking? But really, this is all new for all of us. And really it's about the lack of system infrastructure to handle the horsepower of AI and to accommodate the new procedures and ways of operating that really reflect the incredible value that AI is bringing into organizations. And so before we get too far down the road and sort of thinking about, okay, how do we manage that people aren't doing things right? It's really, I think, we're at the point in our evolution and sort of the change phase for bringing AI in where it's really about what are the systems that we have in place to ensure that this, doesn't happen? Or how are we incentivizing and motivating the behaviors that we need now? Going back to strategy, do we even know what those are? And so the way we talk about it at Fractional Insights is we need to design what we call psychologically ergonomic systems. And so that means workflows and incentive systems that really fit what naturally is going to elicit the right behaviors and support the actions that are going to feel very natural, comfortable, and safe to the individual. And psychological ergonomics is really a parallel to physical ergonomics, which most people are much more familiar with than psychological ergonomics. But physical ergonomics, kind of calls up the idea of, having your equipment or your workspace set up in a way that's going to prevent harm, prevent injury, and produce the highest quality, sustainable work effort, right? And so the same is true for psychological ergonomics, but it's about understanding organizational psychology and human psychology and being able to apply that to the systems and processes and environment to achieve the peak performance outcomes and impact that organizations are looking to drive. And then the final thing here on the slide is 3, is to support the whole of the human, not just those behaviors that we're trying to drive. And what I mean by that is that we don't just need people to act. We don't just need people to adopt the tool, just do the thing. we actually need them to feel safe, to feel like they matter and are significant, are able to grow, and that they still care and have commitment to the quality and value and impact that they're driving. Because getting them to just adopt the tool, as we've seen, more recently with these trends of work slop and things like that, is not actually driving the outcomes. And we've seen from MIT studies too that the actual productivity gains are actually not that easy to drive. And it's because we have underinvested in the strategic thinking around the human side of how are we going to get the whole system and the humans within it to really change. And some of this is like an identity level change. If you think about changing from my job being, I produce really great reports and, I'm thorough and detail oriented in collecting this information and putting it together in a report. Perhaps that's my prior, job. Now AI is doing almost all of that. And so what value do I have now? Okay, now maybe I'm now like just a checker. Or I can still own the professional identity of delivering high quality, high value reports that are providing the support and resources needed to my team, but I'm doing it in a different way. But really what I'm trying to say there is that there's actually quite a bit of work to be done on really helping people to reimagine and re-identify with how they are a part of the system, a part of the collective, which is putting effort in to achieve the outcomes. And leaders have to be involved to help answer these questions. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit faster now, but I'll just share a little bit about how we actually tackle this problem at Fractional Insights. So we have created a human-centric maturity model, which is a strategic framework. It helps organizations to really successfully adopt AI by focusing on their people and how work gets done. There are those 3 core buckets that I just alluded to: the strategy, ensuring you've got great strategy, that you are redesigning work and systems in a way that are going to be amenable to the strategy and the goals that you're trying to achieve, and then really supporting people in adopting the new behaviors and mindsets and feeling safe and feeling like they are brought along through the change and not just a sort of a victim or under threat mode to do it, or you might be, kicked out of this organization. We might have to replace you or whatever. So we have a 5-level maturity curve on each of these dimensions, from initial to optimized, with defined key markers of what it looks like along that maturity curve. And this really ensures your organization can build the trust, accountability, the cultural readiness needed to derive the most value from the massive investments that many organizations are making in AI. And so it's strategy, why, and where you're going. Systems, the technical foundation that's going to get you there, and support. How do you help the humans who are actually the ones that have to navigate through this change? And I think the single kind of biggest mistake that organizations make is really over-indexing on either strategy or systems, and then only thinking about the support piece as an afterthought. And we're already seeing this pattern emerge and this trend happen where some companies are starting to go, whoa, this isn't working so well. And it's like, yeah, because you've got to actually have a parallel path investment onto the people side too, because it's the human element that really determines whether you'll accelerate or stall. Now, when we combine these 3 things, strategy, systems, and support, this is how we can really diagnose where any organization is across these 3 buckets, across these 3 pieces of the pie. Where are you today in your maturation and how you have been thinking and acting related to strategy, systems, and support? And what do you need to do to move to the next layer of maturity? And we kind of think about it as like the engine, the fuel, and the driver, because we've got to have the engine set up. We've got to have the fuel, which is like the the power source, it's the data, it's the structures, and then we've got to have the people who are driving the whole thing. And so if you think about like an organization being kind of like that as a car, you need all three things to work together. And if you don't have one, Al, if you are missing out on one of those pieces, you can't go anywhere. It doesn't work. It's an interconnected system with the engine and the fuel and the driver. So the strategy, the systems, and the support. Now, each slice of our maturity model has subdimensions, so we get real detailed in this, and I'm not going to go through all the unique subdimensions now, but I just want to give a brief overview so you can see strategy. There's two big buckets: strategy and governance, performance and value realization, and then there's subdimensions on each of those because there's lots of different pieces to this. This is why this is so complex, right? Such a complex problem space, but also really exciting because if organizations can start to understand this better, we know we can really help them accelerate. Systems, same thing, two big buckets and smaller subdimensions there. And then same for the support, where you've got people and culture to think about. And all together, this creates the holistic approach to AI transformation. This is really a socio-technical challenge. It's about the technology and the humans merging, working together, and the success depends on how well we can do that. Now, where we suggest people start is, of course, with strategy. You have to start there. Don't start with the tool. Don't start with the actual tech. Start with a strategy and then consider your tools and select the vendors and how you're going to redesign work and align those things together and then move into the support piece. So this is kind of how we think about road mapping on these things. And we're actively offering this in the market. And so anyone who's listening, if you'd like to know what your diagnostic results are, we're offering a free version of our full diagnostic, which is more intensive, but we're offering sort of a lighter weight one that we can do a little bit more quickly and without too many resources. And we're offering that for free and providing consulting. So wanted to just mention that as an offer to your listeners, Al, if anyone finds this interesting. But that's all I had to share, today. But I'm really excited to hear your feedback on this because I know I'm sure you've got some things spinning in your mind too.
Erin, first off, thank you. And what I'm going to say now. I don't provide feedback. I only offer
Oh,
perspectives and
of
ideas.
course.
I, I just, so first off, I am what's the word? Excited is too cliche. It's, you and I have long talked about the fact that AI initiatives are grossly underappreciating the impact on the human experience at work. A lot of these initiatives are coming out of IT with a host of assumptions, AKA myths, about how people, namely employees, can or should use that technology. And to your point regarding the MIT study and other studies, the value proposition, the promise of efficiency and elevated effectiveness in many cases is not being delivered. And whether it be because of AI slop or an underappreciated reality that AI actually creates work. It does make existing
Oh,
processes more efficient, but it also creates work. And that
that's right.
lack of admittance and dealing with is something that you would undoubtedly surface in your diagnostic. So I want to go there and unpack that in a bit, but I want to go back to this notion of starting with strategy.
Yeah.
And you also likely know the question that I'm going to ask, because you've long heard me talk about first who, then what. And
Yeah.
so, how is strategy formulated? Yes, but first and foremost, by who? Like,
Right.
I just don't see, in my experience and my interviews around the Future of Work project, and even predating that, going even before COVID, we had a great need for new management models, new ways of formulating, measuring, and managing an organization strategy over time. And unfortunately, many organizations did not adapt then, and they have not adapted now, despite this obvious massive disruption with AI, and you can even throw globalization and
Right.
just robotic automation and other disruptions in there. So The pointed question, to formulate strategy, who would you advise be in the room, and what would be, that output that would in turn inform the priorities of consciously building the system downstream?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such a great question. And I think, I alluded to it a little bit, but I think in an ideal world, you need the representatives who are responsible for strategy. So if that's the CEO, it's the CEO. If it's the CIO who's responsible for the systems and the technology, I got the CIO in there. If the CHRO is responsible for the people side, like it really requires the interdisciplinary support. And now every organization is set up differently. So, as I'm sort of listing off titles, it's less about the title of the person. It's more about like what their responsibility and the stewarding that they carry for the organization's success and outcomes is, and ensuring that all voices that are, making these high level decisions can be together. The problem that I have seen so far with organizations in achieving this, like, it seems easier than it is, I think, in practice to say, yeah, we got to get everybody together and have an aligned strategy. And the reason is because I think there's still pockets of mindsets in organizations that see the problem that we're talking about and are forecasting a lot differently than others. And some people still are in a head in the sand kind of a thing, or we're not really ready to invest in AI because our competitors aren't doing it yet, or we don't feel the pressure yet, or so there's misalignment even on the importance of this issue and this, AI transformation across C-suite level. So one of the things that we've been experimenting with that has been so far, helpful in bringing people together is really creating an experience for people that helps them understand just the landscape of where we are on the map in terms of technological advancement and the opportunities therein. So really trying to inspire people to see at the C-suite level, to see, okay, when we went from, pre-industrial era to industrial era, or the second industrial revolution, like what that unlocked was X, Y, Z, D. And then when we got the internet, and unlocked X, Y, Z, D, and it created these phase transitions that really catapulted the way of work into a very different model. And there were winners and there were losers, and there are lessons to be learned from that we can take forward to today. Where, yes, is AI brand new? 100%. Has any of us ever, navigated this before? No. Do any of us know the future? No. But we can look back on these other major digital or massive disruptions to working models, and then use that to reflect and digest what then does it mean for our company now, given that this is the horsepower that we can unlock, and that it will be disrupting the way that industries are looking and running and things like that. And from there, you can inspire the vision setting, right? The, oh, aha moment. I see now how critical this is, or how important this is. And from there, you can start setting the strategy. I think one of the things that we try to get out of like a strategy session, if we're working at the C-suite level, is really to make it simple at the end of the day. Of course, the conversations are deep, dynamic. There's, lots of factors that go into making decisions about strategy. But ultimately, you want to get to a point where at the end of it, the deliverable is like a plan on a page, like a North Star vision that we can, the whole of the organization's leadership can get behind and understand. And that becomes sort of the charging orders, or the song sheet that everyone sings from.
And thank you for sharing all that. Just to play that back, what I hear is that it needs to be cross-functional, and
Mhm.
you need the space and time to actually consider different scenarios and choose consciously the best way forward given
Yeah,
your objectives. And in the
right.
end, that creates an alignment that formerly did not exist, and that increases the probability that investments in creating that system that you're talking about will actually deliver the desired value, whether that be the employee experience or innovation or customer satisfaction, financial outcomes,
Right.
all that downstream. So if that's a fair playback, my question is this, to something that you alluded to, is that we as human beings all have these myths. We have these stories that we tell ourselves. And a lot of them, particularly with AI, there's, to put in a pretentious way, the Dunning-Kruger effect is rampant, where people are overestimating their
Yeah.
ability and knowledge of what it is and what it can do. Meanwhile, there's a host of assumptions that are being taken. Well, it's going to make everybody more efficient, and therefore we can lay off 10% of our workforce, and they'll figure it out.
Right.
And meanwhile, that adversely impacts the employee experience. And you've done research around employee angst and how that has had adverse repercussions unless it's dealt with thoughtfully. So
Right.
here's my question. In this age of information overwhelm, both coming from outside the organization as well as inside the organization, what leaders focus on requires curation. It requires uh, it requires holistic consideration. It's not
Mhm.
just employee experience from a survey perspective, nor is it
Right.
employee experience just with dealing with technology. If we're really talking about employee experience, it's like, what is impacting them day to day, and different job families, and there's nuances. So where I'm going to land with this question is this, is that you alluded to research that's been done in the past that continues to be done, and you are a subject matter expert as a PhD IO psychologist. You've been in the community since your academic days. The fact that many leaders are working off their existing assumptions and not leveraging the subject matter expertise of those such as yourself, and even if they have somebody inside, which many smaller mid-sized organizations do not, they are constrained by their time. They don't have
Yeah.
enough time to actually look of what's happening internally, let alone in talent markets, let alone with leading practices and emerging technologies and all this. So long-winded tee up for this. How do you contend that, or what would you advise leaders that, hey, there are subject matter experts that can help bring knowledge, insights, and ideas as you formulate these
Right.
strategies. So when you do attempt to consciously create the employee experience, again, you can mitigate risk and prioritize investments that are actually going to deliver the desired value. Tell me about that.
Yeah.
What's your case to bring that to the fore?
Oh, well, I love the question. Thank you. Well, I think first of all, I want to start by uh, being empathic to leadership right now. This is an incredibly challenging time, and figuring out how to make these decisions, and even thinking about making decisions in a different way, like relying more on science, or relying more on psychology or psychologists, that even is a different way of solving a problem than many organizational leaders may have typically done before. So not only are we facing like massive disruption, huge problem spaces where we don't have playbooks well crafted and developed, we're learning as we go and asking for even thinking about the problem differently. It's a lot. I mean, these leaders are under incredible amounts of uncertainty and pressure at once. So I'll just start there. But I think the advantage of recognizing that what we're facing right now is fundamentally a human adaptivity challenge. We need our systems and our organizations, who are comprised of human beings, to start to think and act differently, to see themselves and their identity as a part of a ecosystem of agents and humans, and working together to deliver outcomes, to solve big problems. We have to think of ourselves differently. We have to think of the whole ecosystem of an organization differently. And and that requires that people are open, that they're curious, that they have the support that they need, and that we're designing the systems in a way that is designing out dysfunctions of legacy models of the past and designing in the opportunities to capitalize and leverage on the tools and technology to totally remove from the human demand the burdens of work and accelerate the creative, innovative, problem-solving parts of work that humans still are necessary to do. And why I would suggest that this requires specialized expertise, it requires thinking about bringing in, a lot of organizations have them internally, IO psychologists, other types of behavioral scientists, experts that are thinking about organizational behavior and organizational systems and design, is because we can rely on, number one, scientific output and insights that allow us to go forward with confidence, with predictable confidence on the levers that we can pull and how we design and implement these changes and have some predictive understanding of what that's going to mean downstream and when. That is the value of science. And so if we can use that, that can give us a little more confidence and can reduce that breadth of the confidence interval of what's going to play out from here. The other thing is that the psychology, of course, is a huge part of it, and so being able to understand the lived experience, both from the executive suite level and those who have less authority or power in an organization, is really important. And some of the research that we've seen or that we've uncovered is really highlighting this disconnect between executive level and the rest of the organization. And so sometimes what's needed is to have external voices who can help you see the blind spots that you can't see, and help bring these things to your awareness, because we can't solve a problem that we can't see. We can't solve a problem that we don't have a name for. We need to be able to have the conversations, but oftentimes executives are very much in, an echo chamber and bubble, and they are not able to be that in touch with what the experience of the rest of the organization is. So that's another reason why someone that has, psychology, coaching, these kinds of backgrounds are very helpful to work with the executive teams. And then the last thing I'll say, and one of my colleagues and I were talking about this yesterday, that there was a report that came out. I'm not sure, can't recall exactly where it came from, but it was that companies are critical of these big box consultancies that are helping them do AI transformation, because the consultancies are just learning on their dime. So the consulting, the big box consulting vendors are learning on the dime of the client. And first of all, I would say, yeah, probably. Also, that's probably always true. No matter what.
It has.
But the
Same
reason,
thing 25, 30 years ago. So yeah.
yeah, but the reason why having specialists is that we are operating off of first principles and proven patterns of behavior in organizations and humans. It's predictable. It can become like an engineering puzzle if you have the depth of expertise that allows you to apply first principles to a problem set, even if the problem set is brand new. Oftentimes, big box consultancies are generalists, right? And they can have specialty practices and things like that. But there is a value to thinking really intentionally about who are you working with in the consulting space, and how are they going to bring in a first principles kind of North Star agenda that's rooted in science and data, that has the highest predictability of giving you, the outcomes that you're trying to drive. But yeah, it was funny, that conversation, because it's when I think about it, I think we're all learning as we go. Aren't we all learning as we go?
Yeah, we are. What we learn about at what pace, can be different, because we're
Yeah.
all learning from square one. It's going to be very inefficient and frankly unnecessary. If we do have an advanced of, okay, we're going to sharpen the saw as opposed to create the saw in the first place, there's massive value in that. One of the things that's coming up for me, and again, I'm biased based on my experience insofar as that I've been on leadership teams where there's been a third party consultant come in, and they could have been a subject matter expert, or they can just be an expert facilitator, and they're holding the space for us to have a very open
Yeah.
conversation, as opposed to somebody internally trying to create and hold that space. So there's
Yeah.
value in that, in
Yeah.
addition to bringing the subject matter expertise. Have you found that to be true as well?
100%. Yes, 100%. And I think like what you're underscoring is like, and I have seen this also over and over again. And when I've talked to many CHROs in particular, I have more conversations with CHROs typically than like a CIO or a CEO. But what I hear oftentimes is like they're not going to if they're not going to be able to hear it from me, but
Mm.
they are going to be able to hear it from someone external who can come in and take the whole of the information and help reflect back what's being said, what's happening here, and looking at data and looking at functional needs and all of those things. But having that third party, having the facilitators to hold the space, to set the guardrails, to set the tone, to make it safe, and having the expertise around the things like the human side of change and the human side of transformation can be like an incredibly powerful, combination for supporting organizations through this time.
Hey, I have a question came in from a longtime friend and colleague, and his question is around the pace of change too. There's a host of leaders that are assuming that, hey, this is going to happen overnight or very, very quickly. And I have the great pleasure of developing a relationship with Ashley Goodall, who wrote The Problem with Change, which underscores the noise that change creates and looking for actually what's right and leverageable in addition to what requires change. So can you speak to your experience and what you would advise to sometimes slow down a
Yeah.
bit and don't overestimate, particularly when you just don't know how these technologies and processes are going to impact employees and other people within the ecosystem of work. So your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we often rush when we feel threat. We're acting under um, a modality of reactivity. We are trying to self-preserve, and for organizations that can be at the organization level, it feels like an existential challenge or an existential threat. And so I can empathize with this like urgency, this sense of like needing to act, but the problem with acting without having the clarity of vision, the strategy, and the system to get to how do we redesign the work? How do we identify key priorities for redesign? How do we select vendors in a really thoughtful way? How are we going to know if it's working? Do we have the data infrastructure and governance set up to protect us? And then how are we going to support the people in adapting to all of that change? Like if you don't have all of that, you are just, I mean, it's a race to the bottom. It's just like racing to create new problems. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's sort of like it's like if you can slow down to speed up type thing, just take a beat. And I have been noticing this and feeling this really you know, since starting Fractional Insights, but especially in the last maybe 8 months, this idea of like gotta move faster, gotta move faster, gotta move faster is really pervasive. And the fastest way to get to success and the fastest way to get to outcomes is acting with intention.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a couple more questions as we start to wrap up, because you mentioned it earlier and I had a smile as you shared it. You said, for the sake of what?
Yeah.
And in my mindfulness practices over the years, I have focused on the work of Pam Wise and others around intention and appropriate response. And so, what is our intention as individuals, and what is the appropriate response or action to take to achieve that intention? Similarly, for organizations, what's your intention and what's the appropriate response or action to achieve those intentions? What I'm finding, you can translate what I just shared into strategy and systems, and to your diagnostic model. So, can you just share? And we're highlighting this, and I hope listeners and viewers can see that, is that if there's greater clarity on the intention, what to do starts to emerge on
That's
its own, if you will, without a lot of lifting. And there's a great deal of angst that I see among leaders as well as workers that, hey, I'm not really sure we're clear on why we're doing all this. So can you speak on to the power of intention? That's Wayne Dyer's book, and
yeah.
and uh, and the appropriate response within your diagnostic.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking for the leverage, and it makes total sense. And they're trying to cut costs, makes total sense. Um, but one of the things that like has been a concern to me in all of this, as organizations are cutting heads and replacing jobs with AI tools and things, is that like I don't think that we I don't think that we are appropriately appreciating that without intention, we could end up in a situation where our customer base can no longer afford to buy our products or services or things that we're selling because we have created such a poor economy by laying off so many people, by firing so many people, that we are now facing economic despair, which reduces the whole. So like that's part of like where, and I'm talking now at like a very macro level, but that idea can be translated down to the organization. Like if we're really threatening people to adopt AI and do it this way, or you might not be here next year because we're going to be getting rid of 4,000 people out of this organization who don't make the cut because you're not learning AI fast enough, or you're not adopting fast enough. Like it's fine to expect and require that your workforce gets upskilled, but when you induce the fear, when your intention is operating through fear and threat and scarcity, like you are creating so many reverberating counterproductive consequences. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can still achieve the same goal without introducing a whole lot of other problems at the same time. And so that's why this like intentionality, like getting clear on the strategy, getting clear on the vision. How do we want it to look? How do we want it to feel? How do we want to prioritize? How are we going to communicate that? How are we going to hold our culture together while we go through this transformation? How are we going to support people? And it requires the time and investment to get intentional. So yeah, I mean that's also where like we start with the strategy, got to have that strategy in place, and then work from there on systems and support.
Well, thank you. I got a couple more questions, then we'll wrap. And if you're watching or listening, please enter your questions, and we'll get to as many as we can, and as follow up. But Erin, so appreciate how you think systematically, no pun intended, but it is like I get a reaction to the colloquialism of keep it simple, stupid. I didn't come up with the
Mhm.
acronym, don't shoot the messenger. Because there's danger in oversimplifying. And we have to appreciate the nuance. We have to be aware of our biases. We have to be aware of our appetite for certainty, which really does not exist when we're talking about complex open systems and we're talking about human behavior. And so, where I'm going to start pointing towards the question is, yeah, again, talk about colloquialisms. You've had leaders time and again say people are most important asset. I'm hearing that a lot less these days. And not only am I hearing it less, the actions of leadership reflect that they
Right.
don't value people Very
Yeah.
much. Now, I hope this is a blip in the radar. There's a host of external factors contributing to this. Among them is the assumption that AI is going to deliver productivity gains, make sure more efficient. In the
Yeah.
popular press, it's emphasized. So there's boards are saying, well, hey, AI is there, it should be more efficient. I'm reading this, but that is not true. It is a myth. We just don't know yet. And as we alluded earlier, AI not only creates slop, but it creates actually good work. In my experience,
Yes.
I use AI and I'm like, hey, that's a
Sure.
good idea, but now
Yes.
it's more work. And
Yeah.
so, appreciating those nuances is really, really important. So where I'm going to land with this question is that I have found in my individual leadership development and coaching work that people are overwhelmed. Yuval Noah
Yeah.
Harari does a great job in the book Nexus talking about this, where the idea that good information, particularly information that's related to the system for which you are a leader are responsible at that point in time,
Mhm.
requires effort. It requires intentionality to create, and it takes time to consider, not only as an individual, but as a team. So, meanwhile, you got all this noise coming at you as an individual and a team. So, to prioritize what's truly valuable is an effort in and of itself. And I do not find leadership teams, let alone individuals, carving out that time. So, we
Yeah.
did talk about it before, but I want to land on this notion of conscious awareness of how we as individuals and leadership teams are making decisions. Can you speak to your experience as a IO psychologist, how important it is to discern what's really relevant and to actually commission a lot of this research and be co-creators of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, time is one of our most precious resources. That's a resource that we have. And so yes, like spending money and spending time and spending energy and spending mind share on something does require a threshold of recognition that this is really important. And so I do think that the time needed, the effort needed, the bringing in the experts, the spending of the resources, the spending of the money can feel like a barrier or a challenge in some cases, but ultimately, like that is going to deliver a such a massively outsized ROI to do it now, to do it right, to get intentional. Because I'm telling you, like the reverberating downstream implications, problems, new work, new catastrophes that are going to be created with the culture, with the people doing counterproductive things, with the work slap, with the audit. There's so many unrecognized consequences that I think many people who are not thinking, thinking about this in in their day job like I am, are not able to see. But I think if we can keep our drumbeat, Al, and keep talking about this, keep talking about these issues, like this is where it's like we gotta inspire the leaders that hold the keys to drive their organizations to really set aside the resources, the time, the energy, the mindset, or the mind share to focus on this because at the end of the day, it is an existential issue.
Yeah.
If we don't get it right, it will be an existential issue for organizations and hopefully not for humanity and society, but that is a question on the table.
Here's the question. There was just a Senate report today, 100 million jobs displaced over the next 10 years. And obviously, what emerges is going to, only time will tell. At the same time, it is going to require agency, both individually and as teams, to take charge of this noise, this complexity,
Yeah.
and make sense of it for their system for which they're responsible. And that doesn't happen by accident. And it takes new thinking, and you're providing the space for that new thinking. So, Erin, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being your awesome self. So appreciate you. How can people learn more about you and what you're doing at Fractional Insights?
Oh, thank you. Yes, well, thank you so much, Al, for having me. Please find us on LinkedIn. You can follow us at Fractional Insights. Also, Erin Eatough, that's me. Follow me on LinkedIn, connect. Also, Shauna Waters, you can follow and connect with her. We have a newsletter. We put out insight reports. We put out content all the time. So yeah, find us on LinkedIn and our website, fractionalinsights.ai, and we'd love to connect.
All right, Erin, thank you yet again, and see you in Paris in a couple weeks.
Yeah, sounds good, Al. See you
All right, you
then.
be well. Appreciate you.
Bye.